Welcome everybody to the basic investing. I would like to, as always, thank the Vancouver Foundation and Neighborhood Small Grants for providing the grant for the Zoom license. And if you have any worthwhile projects that would benefit the community, do reach out to them for an application for any grants as well. Let's just do a quick recap of what we covered previously. So again, welcome to the basic investing in personal finance. This is session 3. Today is January 23rd, 2024. So we'll do a quick recap and then just begin and cover the last section of the content. So couple of quick glossary words would be stocks, which is capital or equity, where you have ownership. Then we have bonds, which are loans. And we've also looked at some of the assets that you can buy stocks and bonds through, which would be ETFs or exchange traded funds. And the other one would be mutual funds. Those are fairly similar in that they're baskets of goods, baskets of assets, and they just have different fees. And ETFs are usually passively managed, meaning they follow some sort of a formula, while mutual funds generally actively managed, meaning they follow they allow a portfolio manager to make the decisions rather than following a formula. So that was seminar 2. In seminar 3, we talked about risk and volatility. So risk is the same thing as volatility. It's the ups and downs. Generally, the higher the risk, the higher the return over the long run. So in order to determine what sort of assets you want to be buying, you need to determine what sort of risk you're willing and able to absorb. So number one is your time frame. If you have 1 year before you need the money back, it's a lot different and safer asset that you would want to have than if you have 20 years, in which case you would want to be probably primarily in stocks. Second thing is just psychologically, what sort of volatility you're able to be okay with. Are you okay if your portfolio drops 5%, 10%, 20%? And again, you would want to have safer stocks or safer assets such as bonds if you are not psychologically willing to see the fluctuations. The amount of education you have or education period is also a big one. Obviously, the more you know, the more risk friendly, all of the things being equal, you should be. The number 4 item is how much of a return are you needing? So if if you need to double your money in 10 years, you're probably okay with stocks or maybe even safer stocks. If you need to go times 10 in a year, then you need something quite volatile. So that would be the other determinant of what sort of risk you're able to handle, and that will determine what sort of assets you're also able to purchase and be okay with. In that lesson, we basically said start early, buy things with good performance or just low fees if you're buying the passive stuff. Generally, if you automate it and you make it low fee, then you're going to be fine, and you just let it run over the next 20 years. The strategy a lot of people use is, as they make the money, they make additional purchases. So on a monthly basis, they buy $500 worth of whatever it is that they're comfortable for their risk portfolio, or risk friendliness. And that's called dollar cost averaging. And if you see the stocks going down, you continue buying automatically, and you are buying more shares with the prices having gone down. The other thing we do is, we once a year or once every 6 months, we rebalance, where if your portfolio has different types of assets, maybe some riskier, some less risky, and we were comfortable with a certain percentage in each one. If that percentage is out of whack, then we rebalance by selling what is up disproportionately, and we buy what is down disproportionately, in order to get back into balance. And that makes a significant difference in our returns. It's 2 or 3% a year if you rebalance. You're doing the right thing. And I use the example that maybe your safer assets are sort of like your piggy bank. They're not going to have great returns, but they are safe. And when your riskier assets take a tumble, then you crack open the piggy bank and you buy the stuff that went down, and that way you're able to take advantage of that downturn. I did spend most of last session on taxes, where we talked about RSPs, TFSAs. At a high level, if you're in a low tax bracket, you should be using TFSAs, or you should be buying RSPs to start the tax deferred compounding, but not actually using it for your taxes. And then when you get into a high tax bracket, or high tax bracket for you, then start using RSPs, or start using the RSPs that you had been putting money into earlier. TFSA would be secondary, and if you've maxed out both of those accounts, then you can go into non-registered. And uh, basically, TFSA would be for things that are not tax efficient or long shots, but do not put foreign dividend payers into a TFSA, because there's a 15% withholding on dividends. You would want to use RRSPs for foreign dividend payers or non-tax efficient things such as interest. And non-registered accounts should be used for either capital gains or tax efficient dividend payers, such as Canadian eligible dividend payers. So that's kind of the high level for taxes. Do a little bit of research before you set something up to run for the next 20 years. There is a saying, don't let the tax tail wag the investment dog, meaning, as in, don't let the tail wag the dog. Make sure you have good investments and don't overanalyze the tax part of it. But like I said, if you're going to automate something and run it for the next 20 years, try to be putting it into the right account type. And then we finished up with personal finance. So we talked about, let me scroll through really quickly. Sorry. Can I do this any faster? Sorry for making you dizzy. I don't want to leave the screen. There's our taxes. Okay. So we talked about the credit score. which is, are you paying your bills on time? How much of a tax history do you have? Do you have a variety of credit vehicles? And my suggestion is uh, pay your bills on time. Don't have over 30% of your available credit used. Do not carry a credit card balance. I'm sure I'm preaching to the prior here. And basically do all the right things. Don't cut up credit cards that have a history. If you don't want the credit card anymore, I have a couple of credit cards which I use rarely, and I just like once a month I try to put $5 on it somewhere because I've had that credit card for 30 years, literally. And so I want to make sure I keep that history. Don't get any loans in order to improve your credit score. Mortgages and debt. We talked about variable versus fixed rate mortgages. Uh, as we've seen interest rates go up, variable mortgages, the owners are not happy with that because the amount of principal they're paying has come off significantly, or possibly they're only paying interest at this point. Uh, Generally, most people seem to be in fixed rate mortgages, even though over historically, actually variable rates come out a little bit ahead. But people like safety and they know how much they're paying and what their interest rate is. So um, I kind of think there's good debt and bad debt. Uh, if you use debt in order to increase the amount of money that you're making, then I consider that good debt. Consumer debt, not so much. So always pay off your credit cards. If you have an investment property, obviously um, you're going to be borrowing, and then there's a leverage aspect where you make more money because of the borrowing. But of course, if your investment loses value, then you end up multiplying the downward as well. Consumer debt, avoid, right? Spend less than you earn and invest. That's really the secret. It's not really complicated. It's just not always easy. Teaching your kids, start start teaching them early. Allowance needs to be divided into savings, spending, and giving, if that's what you're into as well. And make sure they understand that if you defer gratification, that you're going to have that you're going to have more rewards in the future. So this is the old put a piece of candy, and if you don't eat this, put the piece of candy on the table, and if you don't eat this candy for 10 minutes, I'm going to give you a second piece of candy. And if the child is able to avoid eating a piece of candy and waits for the second one, then that means that they understand delayed gratification. Spams and scams, don't click on anything that you don't know where it came from. So Grant is asking, please fill me in on the negative numbers on the eligible dividends tax chart. So let me go back there. I don't think I'm going to go back too far. Here we are. So you can see the fourth column where you have Canadian eligible dividends. You basically get, I think, don't quote me on this because I'm not an accountant. I think you get probably non-refundable tax credits, meaning you actually get you get negatives against your taxes, all the way up to not paying any taxes, but they won't give you a positive. But I just that's just my guess at it. I actually have to admit I didn't research it because I'm not in those tax brackets anymore, unfortunately. Uh, but the way I understand it, if you can make 50,000 or more in British Columbia without paying any taxes at all, if that money is all Canadian eligible dividends. So the negatives are a good thing. I believe you get a non-refundable tax credit, but maybe what I'll do is I'll look it up and confirm. Ooh, budgeting, yeah, we talked about that. I don't budget, like I have expected spending, so I look at it at the end of the year, but I don't have like jars full of cash where if the jar is empty, you can't spend it anymore. Like that's not my thing. If you are uh, constantly carrying credit card balances and you're digging into your lines of credit, then you need hard stop budgeting where this is how much you're going to spend on going out. This is your allowance per month. And if you go past that, you have to stop. So that's why I say budget if you need to. I do track my spending religiously. I would suggest doing the same thing. 3 months should probably give you a good sample, and then you can prorate stuff like property taxes or insurance. If you pay it once a year, you can sort of prorate that into the 3 months. So you know where your money goes and what your burn rate is, both in retirement and what it is now. Uh, like if you want to know how much money you need for retirement or early retirement, you need to know how much you're spending today and then go through it and say, well, I don't think we're going to need both cars. I don't think I'm going to need the fancy clothes for the office. I don't think I'm going to be eating out as much. Or maybe you're going to be spending more in retirement by traveling. So it all really depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to have. But what doesn't get tracked doesn't get managed is an old proverb in IT anyways. Um, so if you want to make plans, rather than just guessing and say, I think we're going to be spending 70,000 a year in retirement, and you're basing that on a total guess, then it's good to track. And I think if you actually track everything, you would be surprised and shocked how much money you're spending on, coffee here, and this and that. It all really adds up, and it is important to have an idea of where your money's going. And if you're still investing 20% of your gross income, then you're fine. You don't need to budget or anything like that. So, any other question? Thanks, Grant, for the tax question for the Canadian eligible dividends. Any other questions before I launch into the remainder of the information? Okay. So insurance. I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly. Unless there's questions, I'm not going to beat it to death. But there's term life, there's permanent life, there's disability insurance, there's critical illness. We're going to talk about segregated funds, which are insurance-based products. I think it's important for everybody to at least be aware of the terms, even if you don't know the details. So have life insurance if you have financial dependents that would suffer financially if you were to pass away. It's not people who would be sad if you passed away. it is people whose lifestyle would be negatively affected. That's when you would want to have life insurance. Generally, it is recommended by anybody and everybody who's not trying to sell you something. They say, if you need life insurance, buy term. It's cheap. The premium is fixed for the term, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Then you renew it. You renew it at a higher premium because now you're older. So, we're all marching towards the abyss. Um, so yeah, insurance for an 85-year-old is hugely expensive. Of course it is, because you're already past the average. But by then you should be self-insured and have sufficient assets. Um, and you shouldn't have any dependents by then, right? Your kids hopefully have flown the nest and they are self-sufficient. Usually the insured amount should be enough to pay off the mortgage, and then depending on who you talk to, 10 to 12 times your annual salary. So that way, whoever's left behind will be taken care of. The insurance will pay off the mortgage, if any. Okay. So now a different type of insurance is permanent insurance. It doesn't expire. The insurance company knows they're going to be paying it out, so it is costlier. It really is appropriate for only 1% of the people. It's a bad deal. Permanent, universal, whole life, all of those are mixing investing and insurance, and it ends up being a bad deal for uh, for everybody, really. So whole life has an investing component. It allows the cash value to accumulate, and it lasts a lifetime. So I had a salesman say, well, but at 85 years old, nobody will insure you for life, or it will be super expensive. Whole life, if you've been paying into it, you'll still have insurance. But the thing is, they'll be ripping you off the entire time. And at 85, you don't need life insurance anymore. The cash value that gets accumulated can be accessed, but usually at high interest. And generally, the whole thing has low returns. The other version of permanent insurance is universal life, which also has an investing component, also has a cash value. And you have to be very careful and read the fine print, because some of these things will not pay out your cash value and the insurance death benefit. They will only pay out one, and you might have to pay extra in order for it to pay out both, which is an unbelievable thing to happen. Uh, People who pay into these things their whole life and then they get these surprises because they didn't read or understand the fine print is criminal. So this was actually emailed to me, and this was a pitch. 6 years ago, I was going to put in $1,000 a month, so 12 grand a year. There is a death benefit. I didn't need it. That didn't stop the salesperson whatsoever. Unfortunately, I didn't have any dependents, still don't, so I don't need life insurance, period. But you'll note that after 5 years, 5 times 12 is 60,000. The total account value after 5 years was 61,000. To be honest, I don't know what the difference is between total account value and surrender value. They sort of seem to become one and the same. In this example, the salesman used 6.25, then switched to 6.75 return. This would be even worse if you had negative returns, obviously. But the thing is, after 5 years, 12 times 5 years times 1,000 at 6.25% is worth 70,000. So what happened to the 9,000? And don't tell me that that's how much this of a life insurance benefit cost, because they basically took $2,000 a year, give or take, or in this case about 15%. That went into the insurance company's pocket. Um, Now the thing is, if you keep it going after 20 years, uh, it's worth 430. At 6.25%, not even having increased to 6.75, it should be worth 475. So what happened to the 45,000? That again, 2,000 went into the insurance company's pocket. So these pay high commissions to the salespeople, and they're pushed by the salespeople, and they make the insurance company lots of money. But people still get into them. At best, it is a long-term, low return, safe uh, investment, if you want to say. So they talk about it being tax deferred growth, which if I have money in a registered account, that's the same thing that happens. And even a non-registered investment will accumulate tax deferred until I sell something in it. So if I have a bunch of mutual funds and I never sell anything in a non-registered account, that is tax deferred as well. Salesmen compare this to a TFSA, which it is not whatsoever. There's potential for tax-free income during retirement via very high interest loans against the cash value. And then they say, oh, but the loan is tax-free, as are all loans. They will lend you your own money back to you, basically, at an exorbitant amount of interest, which if you don't ask, the salesman didn't even know, he had to go and find out. And back in the days of low interest rates, the rate was 9%. I cannot imagine what it would be today. And then the salesman said, well, you can borrow against it from the big banks. And I talked to my credit union and I talked to Royal, and they said, yeah, we don't loan against cash value of life insurance. So yeah, imagine paying for 20 years and now being sandbagged like that. Uh, so the tax-free distribution of the death benefit upon your death to your beneficiaries does happen just like any other life insurance policy. So if you just get a regular term life, that is also tax-free to your beneficiaries. It also bypasses probate like all insurance. So another way this gets sold is by people saying, well, do you have money for your funeral? And they make you invest $20,000 into a whole life policy, so it bypasses probate, and your family has money to pay for your funeral. Well, take the most trustworthy of your kids and say, here's 20,000, this is for my funeral. Don't spend it, it's for my funeral. And you won't have to pay 15% to the insurance company. Uh, the the entire policy value, both the insurance coverage and the fund value, is distributed directly to your heirs. But like I said, not in all policies. One or the other can be withheld. Read the fine print and ask and make sure they point it out to you. But this is up to tax-free, but only up to the premium amounts that you paid in. Basically, they're giving your own money back to you tax-free. It's your own money. But taxes are paid on appreciation of investments, if any. And like I said, usually there isn't much. Just like in any non-registered account. So they're completely fibbing if they say that it's tax-free. So just be aware of that. Only up to the amount that you put in. And Yeah, the death benefit is tax-free. Cash, it grows on a tax-deferred basis. Um, as long as you don't withdraw more than what you paid in, you won't pay any taxes, but then you're just getting your own money back, sometimes years and years later. I think I covered that. Term life won't insure you into your 80s, or it'll be very expensive, but by then you really shouldn't be needing life insurance. You won't have any dependents, and or you should be self-insured. So I hope that's clear. Um, so disability insurance is kind of the better version. So we talked all the way up until now was life. You died. Disability is if you can't work. Uh, so they give you ongoing payments, but the premiums are expensive because they will they'll keep paying you until 65 or until you die, depending on the insurance. So it's quite expensive. Critical illness is cheaper. They will give you a one-time payment if you get one of 30 things done to you. So it's cheaper, but it's a one-time payment, and there's no more risk to the insurance company. While with disability, it's ongoing. Mortgage life insurance. So this isn't a great product. It does get pushed by mortgage brokers. It pays off your mortgage if you pass away. A regular term life is more flexible because you can use that for other things. And it's likely cheaper because your mortgage principal decreases over time, but your payments will not with a mortgage life insurance. So be very careful of that. If you have a mortgage and you have a mortgage life insurance, and you want to make sure the mortgage is paid off in case of your untimely passing, make sure that you just get a regular term life and make sure that it covers the mortgage, like I had said earlier. Okay, so segregated funds. So those are mutual funds which have an insurance wrapper. Okay, people don't know what those things mean. So because of the insurance wrapper, it bypasses probate, meaning the money's available. It's not going to get held up, just in case you don't know what probate is. It doesn't get held up after your death while courts decide how your estate is allocated. That's probate. Even if you have a will, everything still goes through probate. Just with a will, it's faster because there's no decision making. They just verify the will, good, and we're dividing things up. But if you don't have a will, then probate takes longer. Insurance bypasses probate and it goes right to the beneficiaries, so the money isn't locked up for 3 to 12 months, depending on your estate. So segregated funds have that bonus. The other benefit is that generally they're not accessible by creditors during bankruptcy. And generally it'll just be the mutual fund name, and then it'll have something like 75/100 or 100/100 after the name. And the thing is, it has a higher management expense ratio depending on what these numbers are. Uh, at least 1%, sometimes 2%. So generally it has sort of a maturity period, nothing official, but the benefits that this carries do not kick in until after you've held it for 10 or 15 years. So you're not locked in, but you would lose the guarantees, which I'm about to mention. So the first number, if it's a 75, then it's 75% of the premiums that you invested is guaranteed at this maturity. So if you put in 10 grand and 10 years later it's only worth 6, they will make up, if it was a 75, they will make up $1,500, right? They need to give you 7,500 when you sell, and if it was only worth 6,000, then they have to pony up 1,500. Okay. but you had to have held it for at least 10, sometimes 15 years. The second number is the number of premiums, the amount of premium is guaranteed at death, even prior to maturity. So that's the thing. So this will get sold to everybody, but it'll especially get sold to somebody who's older, and they say, well, you're guaranteed. Uh, Even if you pass away in 6 months, your estate is still going to get the percentage that is in the second number. Okay. So insurance companies, just like with life insurance, they know all the percentages. They know how likely you're going to live, and so they know all of these risks to them, and they make sure that when it's over, 10,000 people, that they come out ahead. So they charge the fees appropriately. So they're still making money on it. So this is also sold because it bypasses probate for funding for your funeral. So just give the responsible child the cash now. Okay. Um, so some of them have something called a reset option. So if the investor chooses this and you've had capital gains appreciation, you can reset your starting capital to guarantee at the new level. So when you put in 10,000 and goes up to 12 and you say reset, then your new base is 12,000. But this reset also resets that 10 or 15-year clock. So basically, all of this is designed to keep the mutual fund company and the insurance company collecting the MERS on the mutual fund, plus, of course, the additional MERS that the segregated funds pay. So this has extra bells and whistles with a lot of fees, and they just want you to stay invested and keep paying those fees. So if it's a 10-year period, there's very, 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 very few 10-year periods when the North American markets were negative. So that's even if the fund was 100/100 over a 10-year period, there's very few 10-year periods where North American markets were negative. The guarantee's pointless. The guarantee's pointless. The death one, sure, okay, fine. But this is still being sold to 20-year-olds who have a very tiny chance of dying. NASDAQ was down 14 years after the dot-com crash, and Japan, I think, for 30 years they've been down. But if you're investing in North America, the odds of a 10, let alone a 15-year down period, let alone down 25%, like if it's a 75, are very small. So the mutual fund company and the insurance company are just playing the odds because they know history. While if somebody like my mother has pitched this, it's like, oh, I can't lose. Oh, this sounds great. And doesn't, the higher fees are not pointed out to her. She's certainly not going to have creditors go after her, so that creditor protection is pointless. And she doesn't even realize that, if nothing else, inflation is eating away at the value. So again, become self-insured. That would be my suggestion. And you may not need life or disability insurance at all. The other suggestions are raise deductibles on car and home insurance, making it cheaper. I'm not going to talk about car and home insurance, but this is just usually home insurance. You want to keep your premiums low. And if you have high deductibles, like insurance is usually for really serious events. Like if you break a window and like you're just going to pay the $200 out of pocket, you're not going to use your insurance to pay the window because first of all, usually the minimum deductible is 500 anyways. and your cost of insurance would go up significantly. So you're usually insuring against disasters anyways when it's a total loss. And that's when the higher deductible isn't going to really be that bad a thing. And your premiums are going to be a lot lower. And of course, the odds are nothing will happen anyways. Okay, so that was insurance. Get term life if you have financial dependence. Don't insure your children. That's another thing that people do. Your child passes, you as the parents get money that you didn't need because it's not like the child was feeding you, and your child is still gone. Like it's like that kind of thing is really just morbid. Um, Avoid any sort of permanent life insurance. Just get term, invest the rest yourself in, as we talked about, in exchange trade funds, low fee. Um, Disability insurance, that's your choice, or critical illness. I chose not to get any while I was accumulating just because I wanted that money to invest. I remember, and this was like a decade ago, but disability insurance was like 200 a month, which seemed really steep. Critical illness was cheaper, obviously, but the useful one is the disability insurance. So I'm just like, I'm not going to pay 200 bucks a month. Become self-insured. That would be my suggestion. Segregated funds are insurance products, which if you actually look into them and you understand the history, they don't really make sense. Maybe for somebody who's in their 70s or 80s, but even then, just give gifts rather than having these things to bypass probate. Financial independence. So I think up until now, I think I've been. And sorry, any questions about insurance? I think I went into it probably more than I could have, but um, I just because it's such a ripoff, I'm quite passionate about it. Okay, so financial independence. So this is basically a branch of early retirement. Everybody should be financially independent at 65, meaning you don't have to work anymore. That's how I define financial independence, not having to work anymore. There is the FIRE movement, FIRE, which is some very enthusiastic people, where it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And those are people who hate their job and decided not to change careers. And so they started saving and investing, and at one time their portfolio gets a critical mass where they don't have to work anymore. So that's financial independence. So, well, we're going to talk about becoming financially independent. If you're 20 and you want to become financially independent at 40 and keep working for fun or work for for a charity, that's fine. Even at 65, you should be looking for financial independence because at that point, retirement and financial independence is the same thing. So as I mentioned, when you get a critical mass in a portfolio, I'm going to talk about multiple streams of income. That is quite key. So have several diversified streams of income. If you only have your salary and you lose your job, then you have no income and you have to find another job. So that's sort of the opposite of being financially independent. You're quite financially dependent on your job. So mix and match depending on who you are, what you like. If you're into real estate, be a landlord. If you're a dividend investor, dividend income is great. You can do contracting on the side if you just to keep in society and you want to work 10 hours a week, then you can be a contractor. You'd be surprised where everybody wants a full-time job and wants to work 35 to 40 hours. and there's these tiny little jobs that nobody wants, and you're just a contractor. You get paid by the hour in whatever it is you're good at. Whatever you did previously, you can continue doing as a contractor part-time. You can do blogging with advertising, YouTube content producer, online book publisher. You can run online courses. You can provide training, whether live or recorded, online selling, editing other people's books and courses or whatever, editing videos for people. So there's so many, dog walking. Uh, Basically, you're financially independent once you have sufficient income from various sources to not have to work or do what you want to do. Obviously, at that point, you can make any choices you want. Uh, I became financially independent about 4 years ago, give or take, and it was very liberating. It was amazing. Uh, I managed to fill up my time quite well, thank you. One of the bad things about early retirement, and I don't know if I have a note about it, is that uh, people just stop working cold turkey and they, do nothing. They watch TV all day, they play video games, uh, and they gain 40 pounds and have a heart attack until they realize that humans need something to do. If you hated your job, ideally you should be changing careers into something that you enjoy, but we all make our own choices. So FI is about choices and independence. I can take time off anytime. To me, it means freedom and quitting a bad job rather than being forced to stay in it. I've talked to lots of people that say, I love my job. I always say, would you do it for free? That's another thing. But uh, people say, I'm going to keep working forever. Like there's no downside to what I'm doing. You should have an emergency fund. We talked about emergency funds earlier. If you're accumulating and you either have a job or have easy prospect of getting another job, having 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund if you lose your job, or if you need to replace the furnace in your house, having cash that's available. Uh, the idea is so you don't have to sell your investments that possibly went down. That's what that protects you from. As Dave Ramsey says he's a U.S. radio personality on investing and personal finance. He says an emergency fund turns an emergency into an inconvenience, and it's quite true, right? Me, I still don't want to spend the money even if I have it, but that's a different problem. Uh, so as far as tracking your expenses, know what your expenses are so you know what income you need. Track your expenses constantly, or at least the 3 months I talked about it. So you know your burn rate. And once you figure out that in a given year you spend $37,000 a year, when your portfolio is able to provide 40,000, then you know that you're now financially independent. Very rough guideline is the 4% rule, which says, and there was a study where they ran portfolios over different 35-year periods. So this was, if you retire at 65, you're not going to run out of money in 35 years if you only spend 4% of your starting portfolio and then you just adjust it for inflation each year. Okay, that's a very rough guideline. You can use a smaller number, but basically how it works is once your financial independence number, or basically your portfolio size, is you got your yearly spending divided by the safe withdrawal rate. So if you want to spend 50,000 a year and you want to use the 4% rule, you're multiplying 50,000 by 25 or dividing it by 0.04. right? The math is the same. Therefore, your portfolio needs to be 1.25, 1.25 million to reach financial independence. Uh, if your spending is higher, but you're 65 and you're also going to be taking CPP and old age security, then obviously that figures into your calculations. Years to financial independence is your fine number, which we calculated earlier. So 1.25 million minus amount already saved divided by your annual savings, right? So if you already have 1.25 million, if you need 1.25 million, you already have 1 million, so you need 250,000, 250,000, and you're able to save 50,000 a year. You know that in 5 years you will have the 1.25 million. So just this was in 2022, so it did go up some because of inflation. Canada Pension Plan maximum in 2022 was 15,000. Most people get a little bit over half because they haven't been maxing it out or they hadn't been paying into it their entire working career. So at 65, max would be 15,000. If you take it later, you get roughly 30% more. If you take it earlier, you lose, I think, 36%, I want to say. Old age security, as I said in a previous seminar, that does get maxed out just by virtue of being a resident in Canada after you're 18 for 40 years. So it's 8,200 per year. So add it together, as I said, people don't max it out, but add it together, that's 23,000. If you're under 20,000, you also get a third type of government help, which is the guaranteed income supplement. It basically pulls you out of poverty. So if you're just getting 15,000 and you have no other income, you're going to get a GIS. Okay. So just at a high level, how do you become rich, financially independent, whatever your name, free, whatever your name is for it? The number one determinant is your savings rate. It doesn't matter if you're paying low fees and you're in the most tax efficient investment ever. If you're putting in $50 per month, you're not going to be financially independent anytime soon. So savings rate. And that's up to you. What kind of life do you want to live? If you're okay working, no problem. You're having fun now, I'm presuming. Yeah, it is what it is. So everybody has to make those decisions themselves. Me, it took some bad employers to become really motivated, and then the savings rate shot up. The second biggest determinant in what returns you get and whether you're rich is asset allocation, which, remember, we talked about at the beginning, is where are you putting your money? Are you putting your money into stocks? Are you putting it into bonds, real estate? Stocks, especially small companies, which have a lot of upside, but also a lot of risk. Over time, they will outperform everything. Bonds are a little bit safer, but they're a drag on your portfolio. Real estate depends on where you are and what kind of an investor you are. You can do quite well. But these two things play the biggest role in determining your net worth. It's not low fees. It's not trying to hit a home run with a single stock. So just statistically. Track your income. I think I'm sort of beating this to death. You can't manage what you can't measure. Have goals and pick your investments according to the time and the return that you need, as we talked about when we were talking about the risk and volatility. How much to save and invest, what kind of lifestyle you want to have, totally up to you. It's your life. Life goals dictate your financial decisions. It's just that time starts going by for everybody. And you're busy, and first you're paying off student loans, and then you get married, and you get a mortgage, and then you have kids who are expensive, and then you have to pay for their college. And if you don't allocate uh, investment for your financial independence and or retirement, you're suddenly 50, and it's like, okay, the kids are out, house is paid off, let's say, but now you actually have to put in a lot of money. While if you had put the money in when you were 20, time would have done the heavy lifting. So it's like, do you want to live for today? But know that it's costing you, and the cost is being multiplied because of you're losing out on that time factor. Or do you want to live for tomorrow, right? I always say um, saving is just spending later. So, I kind of think of it that way. Beware of lifestyle creep as you make more money. As what used to be a treat now is a must have. And everybody says, oh, I deserve it. I deserve it. I worked so hard. I got my raise. They call it never get a raise again. Uh, so determine what your goals are. People write them down. It could be including having time with family, time to travel. Uh, Time is free, but you probably need to find something to fill it. Travel requires a little bit of time, but depending on where you go, lots of money. Getting to financial independence can be done in two ways, either as an investor or as a business owner. Try to front load your efforts, start early. Uh, Try to become at least FI. If you hate your job, change careers, don't retire just to get out of a bad job. Sometimes just changing to a different employer, right? Choose a series of refreshing mini retirements. This is another strategy, or take a hiatus, a sabbatical, and work later into life so you don't get burned out. Like I got burnt out pretty early on. Um, so ideally enjoy your job so you never have to quit and you're excited to be going to work every morning. And finally, you need to have a purpose. You need something to do. As humans, we don't do very well when we don't have any goals and any reason to get up in the morning. Have hobbies, volunteer, and you're going to be happier. You really can't watch Netflix for the next 40 years. So I never could get to the bottom of these numbers. Basically, according to your savings rate is years until retirement. Yeah, anyways. So somebody calculated this. I don't know what the magical formula is, but I think it's kind of cool. So basically, if you're saving 50%, which is pretty hefty, for me, it wasn't really a problem. But if you're saving 50% of your income and investing it, then according to this, you should be able to retire in 17 years. If you're saving and investing 85% of your income, then 4 years. So it adds up pretty quickly, because also don't forget you're theoretically able to live on 15% of your income, right? So that means you're also not living on a heck of a lot. So that way it accumulates quickly, but also when you're taking money out, it's not a lot. So that's why the time shortens that way. Okay, so this is just calculations, which I thought were kind of fun. Getting to 1 million if you start at zero in 20 years. So this is what the curve looks like. This is how much you need to be investing monthly on the vertical, and on the horizontal is the return you're getting. So if you're getting a 6% return, you need to be investing over $2,000, 2,200 give or take. If you think your investments can get you 14%, you only need to invest monthly 700. 750 maybe. And of course, let's say 9% return, you need to invest 1,500. And after 20 years, you are going to have a cool million. Obviously, 20 years later, that million won't buy the same that it does today, but it's nice to think about. And of course, to get to 2 million, similar curve, just the numbers have increased on the vertical. So that was how to become financially independent, achieve a critical mass in your portfolio. The rule of thumb is 4%. If you're retiring at 25, you might wish to only use 2% and multiply the amount that you're going to be spending per year times 50 rather than by 25, because that is a long time. Having multiple streams of income is super important, because if one dries up, you have others, right? You can maybe ramp up some of the others to make up for the loss of one. Having multiple clients as a consultant sort of works the same way, but sometimes there's macro events where the economy slows down and all of your clients let go. Save early and save as much as possible, or as you want to. My personality was always to save as much as possible, and I was always very frugal. And when I learned investing, there was really no stopping me. But obviously, people live their lives in their own ways. Invest early, I think I mentioned. Okay, so this is for the real beginners. I don't know how many people are on. Let me take a look. So of the folks that are on, this is basically how to make a purchase of a mutual fund. Can you guys who want me to go through this in some detail, can you just say me or yes or whatever? Just let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go through this very quickly because there's more interesting stuff later. Okay, perfect. So portfolios and mutual fund analysis, I'll go through this. I'll show you some sample portfolios, analyzing mutual funds. I'll talk about how to begin investing. So here's a sample portfolio. This was something that I actually did. This is all stocks. These follow indexes. I had this. I don't have it anymore. I'm not advocating it. You'll note it adds up to 500, which was a TFSA limit, right? 500 times 12 was the 6,000. So I had Canadian index, so that followed the TSX, so that followed the stock exchange. I wanted US representation, so I had the US index. I made it currency neutral, so this is not affected by Canadian dollar getting stronger compared to the US or vice versa. And that followed the New York Stock Exchange's Standard & Poor's 500. So this is 500 of generally the biggest US companies, and it's a good representation of the US economy. And then I had an international index, which followed EFI. EFI stands for Europe, Australasia, Far East. MSCI just stands for Morgan Stanley Capital Investments, I want to say. I'm into international. This wasn't really emerging markets so much. It was fairly developed markets like in Europe. But I kind of think the growth is going to be in the international. I've been wrong about that for about 10 years, but okay, yeah, Cindy, I'll go through it. Thank you. So this is a sample portfolio. These were actually mutual funds, but today I'm doing them in ETFs. Okay. So here's another one. So I just pulled this off a website. So this is Balanced. So these are again mutual funds. These are actually Toronto Dominion Down here, I have a note TD E-Series index funds. They have low MER. You can see the E-Series. And then here you kind of need to determine what kind of investor you are. Are you conservative, cautious, balanced, assertive, or aggressive? And then that determines the percentages that you're going to be putting in. And also at the end of the year, we talked about rebalancing. So maybe if you're an aggressive investor and you're putting in $1,000 to make the purchase, to make the calculations easy. So I would be putting 10% into my piggy bank, a bond fund, 30% goes equally into, or 30% goes into Canadian, US, and international. And at the end of the year, when these numbers are not the same and they're significantly out of balance, you would buy and sell appropriately in order to put them back into balance. If you're a conservative investor, maybe you don't like the fluctuations, or maybe you don't have a lot of time before you need the money back, then you would be 70% in bonds and then 10% in the others, just for a little bit of spice. So that's how this would be used. You can Google all of this stuff and you'll get dozens of sample portfolios. I guess from the same website, but slightly different options. So we have a bond index. These are now ETFs. FTSE is just a ratings agency. That's nothing to confuse you. And we have Canada and then excluding Canada. So if you're conservative, again, 70% bonds, a little bit in Canada, a little bit more in the rest of the world. If you're aggressive, then you're only 10% in bonds, right? That's your piggy bank in case the other two tank and you want to have some money to throw in. They said 30% in Canada and then 60% in the rest of the world. Okay. And then this was another one. This is what I was doing, I guess, 7 years ago, where every month automatically it would purchase 4 mutual funds for me. Back then, there weren't any commissions for buying mutual funds. Now there are, and I just did 300, 200, 200, 300, and it would get partial shares. Mutual funds do partial shares. Today, you can do that with ETFs as well. So mutual funds, I'm going to go through them because I do use them. So look for 4 or 5 star on Morningstar. You guys remember we talked about Morningstar. I'm going to type it in. So we have morningstar.ca. Make sure it's the Canadian version or you won't be able to find anything. Oh, did I send that to everybody? No. Just Cindy. Everyone. Okay. So they have a star rating. 4 and 5 stars mean that it's beating 70% and 90% respectively of the mutual funds in the same category. So I'll show you. You're looking for something where the mutual fund's performance exceeds its benchmark, its index. As I had said before, the ETF will just follow the index. You can find mutual funds which beat the index even after fees. There's not that many though, which I can see why people had gotten into ETFs. Be aware of the MER. Notice I'm not saying beware, I'm saying be aware of the MER, but it's the performance that matters. So know that there's a MER, know what it is, but don't let it scare you as long as the performance after the fees beats the benchmark. Check the category. I'll show you what that is so you know what the fund invests in. There's other things. I hope I have a screenshot of the mutual fund. So there's investment style, there's fund size, turnover, yield, and load. We'll talk about that. I think I mentioned this, that the best funds will outperform other mutual funds and also their benchmarks. Okay, so some fees on mutual funds. There's something called a front end. You could charge like a financial advisor could charge you 5%. If you have a discount brokerage, they usually have a front end zero, meaning it's a front end, but it doesn't charge anything. But it used to be that you would pay 5% up front. So I would give my financial advisor $10,000. He would take 5% and invest 9,500 for me, which sucks. Deferred sales charges, that's illegal now all across Canada. It's a decreasing charge if you sell before 7 years. It used to be popular with financial advisors because they would get a 5% commission when they sold. So when they sold the mutual fund to you under a deferred sales charge, they would immediately get 5%, and then the mutual fund company made sure that you stayed with them in order for them to recoup that 5%. Okay, that's not allowed anymore. Low load is something similar to a deferred sales charge, but it comes off after 3 years. So it's decreasing. So the first year with a deferred sales charge, the first year if you sell, they'll charge you, I'm making this up, 6.5%. If you sell second year, they'll charge you 5.5%. Third year, they'll charge you 4.5% and so on, right? They want to make sure that the more pays for that 5% commission that got paid to the financial advisor. So no load or front end zero is what you want to do, right? Front end zero or no load. Okay, so here is a screenshot from Morningstar. I blacked out the fund. It is 4 stars. So some things we want to look for on here. Does this? So Morningstar. So investment size is the first thing. It's right here. Do I get a circle? No. So investment size, this one's 2.9 billion. Once a fund gets past about 10 billion, it becomes kind of like a cargo ship. It takes time to stop and to steer and to change direction. So basically, they're not able to perform well anymore because if they want to buy something, they cannot get enough of it. So Grant is asking, are low loads still legal? I understood deferred sales charges were illegal. I didn't hear the same about low loads. So as far as I know, they still are okay. I could be wrong. Either way, don't use it, right? And if you look at your statement from the mutual fund company or from your financial advisor, you'll have the mutual fund name, and then on the tail end, which nobody ever knows what these cryptic acronyms mean, you'll see DSC or LL or FE and stuff like that. So that's like you need to be aware of that. And financial advisors either don't mention it or people don't understand it. Anyway, so if you have something that's too big, they have too much money when it comes to investment size. They have too much money, and they're like, oh, here's a company we like at this price, and then they start buying it, and the price, of course, starts going up. So now they're not able to get it at the price that they want. So it's not a showstopper, but once you get past 10 billion, it starts hurting. TTM. I always look this up and then I forget. Trailing 12-month yield. So this is dividends. This particular mutual fund is not paying any dividends. The MER we talked about a lot. This is a do-it-yourself, meaning they don't pay any commissions to a financial advisor, so a financial advisor will not sell this to you. If it was a mutual fund that a financial advisor would have in their repertoire, the MER would probably be 2.5%, and the 0.75% would go to the financial advisor as commission every year, or maybe 0.5%. Okay, because this is a do-it-yourselfer, the MER is lower, but a financial advisor is if they want to do you a favor, they might buy one for you, but otherwise you're on your own. But of course, this is your bread and butter in a discount brokerage. Minimum initial investment, this is per account. So like if I'm just starting out in my RRSP, for example, I could buy 2 mutual funds from the same mutual fund company in my RRSP, each for $300, and I'm fine as far as this minimum. So here's the category. Talk about that. Here's the category. Uh, this is just a Morningstar classification. Canada Fund is the same everywhere. Ignore the first 2 words. Canada Fund, ignore that. So this is global, small, and mid cap equity. So global meaning the whole world they can buy from. That's different from international, which would be just outside of North America. Global means including North America. Small and medium-sized companies, that's sort of self-explanatory. And cap is capitalization, that goes with the small and mid cap. And then equity means stocks. And the investment style, I won't go into it too much, but basically this grid here, it is north and south is the size. So at the top row would be large companies, middle row would be mid-sized companies, and this one is small. That's why the size is in the bottom row. East and west, you have growth versus value. So growth means companies, the fund would invest in companies that are already maybe overpriced, but they're expected to go higher because everybody's expecting great things from them. While value is generally companies that are not overpriced, but there's not much growth expected either. So that's frankly what I like. And stuff that pays dividends as well, that's also value. So that will show up on if it's on the left side or the right side. This is a blend, meaning they can invest in anything they'd like. Turnover means what percentage of the assets get sold during a year. That's important if this is a non-registered account, because if there's a lot of activity, and you'll get mutual funds that have over 100%. If there's a lot of activity and then there's tax implications from that, even if you didn't sell anything, but if there was a lot of trading inside the mutual fund, then that'll get passed on to you in taxes. Risk level, medium to high, there's 5 of them. There's low, medium, medium, high, and high. So this one's on the risky side. There's volatility. And you can see the scale actually here is pretty significant. I won't be able to compare it to another mutual fund, but like it's really moving. Inception date is when the fund was created, so you know how much history there is, and status just means open. So the main thing here is the blue is the investment, the yellow is other mutual funds with the same categories, so global, small, and mid cap. And the red is the benchmark, is the index. So when I said you could pick out good mutual funds that can beat their index, this is what I'm talking about, that even after the MER, after 1.75%, it's still able to beat its benchmark. Okay. Obviously, most of the mutual funds in this category are well below the benchmark. So the benchmark is also what the ETF would follow. It would just follow that benchmark formula. You'll notice just from the chart that the mutual fund has more volatility than the benchmark or the other mutual funds as well. And that probably cost it star number 5 up here, because the stars are volatility adjusted. So if something has more volatility, then it gets penalized with the star system. So I'm not suggesting to use mutual funds. I'm saying you can. the large majority, like I said previously, 70-80% over a 10-year period of mutual funds are this yellow line where it's underperforming its index. And then that's just really bad. Okay. Um, Okay, so then if you're not a visual person, then you can get numbers. Uh, on a yearly basis, you can see what the investment did, what the other mutual funds did, the category, and then the index. And then you can see what quartile. So you want the fourth quartile, you want the top. So most of the time it is near the top. It had a couple of bad years, 2016 and 2021. So it is what it is. Okay. So how to begin? So I think this will be useful for everybody, but uh, Cindy mentioned, so we'll go through this. So investment thesis, have something preferably written with some sort of measurable parameters, what you're aiming for, what you need in order to fulfill your investing goals, your financial goals, your life goals, ultimately, right? So do some soul searching, find out what you want. Do you want time? Do you want to travel, like I said earlier? And eventually you say, okay, we need this sort of a return, we need this much cash flow. And so then when you're making investments, make sure that the investments are okay with this thesis. So my thesis is I want cash flow, so I never, ever, ever, ever have to go to work anymore. And number two is I want I want time, basically. I don't need a lot of money, uh, but I want time. And then number three, which is sort of a different animal, but I believe that in emerging markets, because that's where there's a growing and a young population, I believe that's where the growth is going to be. And so I want to make sure that I'm targeting that in my investments. So my portfolio has a lot of dividend payers that I can live off of. And then for growth, I have foreign stuff. So that's sort of how I'm fulfilling my investing thesis. Uh, Otherwise, your portfolio is a bit of a mess. There's no direction, and you can't really point anything out to anybody. So organize it, at least that's sort of my nature. So you can go top down, have an investing thesis that ties everything together. So I sort of said poor countries with low average age grow fastest as people are pulled out of poverty. So that's sort of another thing on the developing markets and emerging markets. You can just choose to go bottom up, where you just pick individual investments that you think are going to outperform the overall market without uh, any sort of rhyme or reason. But I mean, ultimately, you either want growth out of your portfolio or you want cash flow or some combination. So my investing thesis is emerging markets, as I mentioned. Determine your risk profile, which we talked about multiple times now. Decide on an account. Where are you in your life? Are you in a high tax bracket for you? Or are you in a low tax bracket for you and you're expecting much better things in the future? I think I covered that multiple times now. If you're at the beginning, TFSA or invest in RSP, but don't use the tax benefits. If you've maxed both of them out, non-registered is fine. And then look for tax efficient things to put into non-registered. Decide on a portfolio, mutual funds versus ETFs. You can certainly have both. Choose the specific investments. Super simple, like 2-3 ETFs, and you just start. Just get going. Choose a discount brokerage. Money Sense, which I enjoy reading articles from. They put out the best online brokers in Canada. It looks like Qtrade and Questrade sort of take turns being the best. I have to admit, I don't like Qtrade, which is one of my brokerages, but it is what it is. So you can do research. As I said, 6 hours ago before, as we were starting. Determine what you want, how you're going to be doing it. Are you going to be doing small amounts on a regular basis? Are you going to be doing large amounts on an ad hoc basis? And pick the brokerage that will charge you the least for what you're going to be doing. Check annual fees for various accounts. Some of them have minimums. $20,000 seems to be kind of a going minimum. After, if you're under that, then some brokerages will charge you annual fees. Over that, they'll forgive them. Look for no commission brokerages. Wealthsimple is one. Questrade, there's no commissions to buy any ETF. Other brokerages might have 100 ETFs that you can buy with no commission. Generally, they'll charge you $5 to $10 to sell. Wealthsimple doesn't have any commissions to buy or sell stocks or ETFs. So, but then again, it has no research, for example. So you have to do the research somewhere else. While Qtrade has paid research from Morningstar, like they just pay Morningstar, and when I go to morningstar.ca, I don't get to see everything, but when I go to Qtrade, I get to see everything. So, you know, yeah, choose the account. You fill out the forms, usually online. You'll have to give them a checking account info. You may have to send in a paper form with void check. Usually today everything's online. 15 years ago, I had to send in a whole bunch of paper. And then you basically link up your checking account with the brokerage, and you transfer anything from existing brokerages if you want to. If right now you have a financial advisor and you have mutual funds, choose a brokerage that will take mutual funds, because Wealthsimple, for example, does not. So you sort of need to do that research. And then if you want to set up regular withdrawals, then you need to fill out a pre-authorized payment form. And then you just transfer money from the checking account into the trading account and then buy whatever you want. Some brokerages will let you buy first, and then you have a day or two to initiate the transfer. Wealthsimple not only makes you initiate the transfer, the money actually has to arrive before they let you buy something, which does not make me like them either. And the commission-free thing is not really making up for it. So to automate things. So this is Qtrade's. I don't know if you guys can see that, probably not. Basically, account name, account number, all that stuff. Down here, you have, am I doing a weekly purchase, monthly purchase, and then exactly what? ETF, mutual fund, whatever it is, and this is how much money I'm putting into it. You just sign stuff off, and that's it. And then every month they will pull money out of your checking account and they will invest it as appropriate. You don't have to do anything. This automation thing, if that's who you are, is the way to go. It also allows you, this is a cliche, but pay yourself first, meaning the money comes out the first of every month, and then you can spend whatever's left right after you did the investing. Whether you're investing enough, of course, that depends on you and what kind of life you want to live now and what kind of life you want to live in 30 years. If you do it now, it's easier and your future self will thank you, but your current self maybe wants to go on a trip around the world. So it just all depends on what you want to do. So buying mutual funds manually. So this is all out of Qtrade. Your brokerage will be different, but so you can also do individual stocks where you also find ETFs. I chose mutual funds. Into my RSP account, I'm going to do a buy order. I'm going to make it for $10,000. I'm going to flip on if there's any dividends coming out of this mutual fund that they get reinvested. Okay, and that's it. I've got, um, I don't have any cash in here, so this actually would not do anything. They make, for mutual funds, even Qtrade makes you transfer in the money first because you know how much money, $10,000. So they make you transfer it in first. If you sold something, that trade has to clear first before you're able to make your purchase. So sometimes you have to be patient. So you specify the dollar amount and then the code, and the purchase for mutual funds is done overnight. For ETFs and stocks, it is done only during the trading day when the stock market is open. Yeah, for mutual funds, it needs to be transferred in first. Buying stocks, so now I'm in equity. I picked Royal Bank. Okay. I'm going to buy 100 shares. I'm going to use something called a limit order, which I would suggest to use. The other alternative is market, which basically means whatever somebody is willing to sell to you for is what you'll automatically get. If you use a limit, then so right now this is the Royal Bank was at $128.28, and I said I want it cheaper, and I'm not gonna get it if Royal Bank goes up to 129, 130, 131, and so on. I made it good only through I mean I don't know, a couple of days probably, but this basically means I won't get it unless it goes down. But I know exactly what the price is going to be. While if it's a smaller company that maybe doesn't trade very often, like you can see even here, the bid, somebody was offering $120.01, and somebody's asking 128.30. And so that's 30 cents, right? So on $100, that's $30. So that could be significant. So by using a limit, I'm able to very much specify what what I'm willing to pay. Symbol or ticker for the stock is RY. By the way, just trivia, where the word ticker comes from is back in the 20s and 30s with the stock market. They obviously didn't have digital screens, so stock prices were printed with basically punched holes on a ticker tape, like a 3/4 of an inch wide piece of paper, and it would stamp out physically into the paper tape. It would stamp out the symbol and then the price that it currently was. So people were just reading these ticker tapes all the time, and because it was paper that you had nothing to to do with afterwards other than burn it maybe, that's when you would have a ticker tape parade where they would rip it up into smaller pieces and throw it from the windows in New York, and that was your ticker tape parade. So there you go, a little bit of trivia. Hope everybody found that fascinating. So using the limit, I think I talked about. Generally, once you know how much your purchase was, that's when you transfer in the cash, because I don't know how much the amount is going to be in the end, right? If I had specified 127, it would be a different price, and then I would have to transfer in a little bit less, $100 less cash. So generally, most brokerages will let you transfer the money in after. But if you don't transfer it in, they'll start charging you interest. So that was seminar 10. We talked about portfolios and mutual funds. Uh, go simple. Go simple and don't overcomplicate things. But just start. Like, don't over research things if you haven't started. And if you're not happy with your current portfolio, uh, then just start simple and just begin. So yeah, kind of decide your investing thesis, talk about your goals with your family, where you want to be, and try to pick a brokerage which will do it least expensively. And I gave you moneysense.ca where you can find reviews of brokerages. Set up something automated if you can. I always have something automated going on, and then when I have extra cash, I also throw it in. Buy stocks, ETFs, mutual funds in an ad hoc fashion if you still have money available. So I think I just said that. Okay, other types of investments. There's a very a slide in here which I think is very cool. So we'll get to that. I think it's sort of the majority of the seminar where I compare the different types of investment. So yeah, I'm going to compare them. So here's some alternate investments. Guys, go through them pretty quickly. I think a lot of them are self-explanatory. So collectibles, classic cars, stamps, comic books, baseball cards, art, Star Wars toys that you didn't take out of the package and play with. Uh, they're speculative because you tell me what the value of a comic book is, right? Especially when today I can easily download a PDF generally for free. So it's all in supply and demand and in the eye of the beholder. But it is an alternative asset. So is art. Art appreciates surprisingly well, but if you don't find the right buyer, for example, that's another thing. Real estate. So I hadn't really touched on real estate. I did invest in real estate and I did some real estate flips in Canada as well. And up until a year ago, I owned real estate in the US. So a couple of ways to make money off of real estate. Um, a couple of notes first, maybe. So money's made on the buy, not on the sell. So what that means is you can't control uh, the sale price. Like you can only sell it what the market is willing to pay you. And there's generally very few motivated buyers. There's nobody who's desperate to buy your house because if they have to move because of their job, they could rent, they could stay in a hotel, they could buy somebody else's house. The money's made on the buy. That's where you have a motivated seller. And that's where you need to get a good price and have a, I guess, a buffer where you're still up um, just because you bought it cheaper than the market, you could theoretically sell it right back into the market and still make a little bit of money. So try to deal with the owner. If you're an investor, if you're going through a realtor, like it's been picked over and any good deals are gone. And you can do creative deals. I talk about some of them. So creative deals are basically the owner needs cash. They're house rich but cash poor. So you say, okay, listen, uh, you can stay in here, and maybe it's an older person who just has this asset, but they need money for groceries. So you stay in here, and you don't even have to pay me rent, but each month, each year, or whatever, I'm building equity. So if you can swing that, you can get a really good deal and the person's happy, you've helped them. I'm sort of justifying justifying taking advantage. You're getting a good deal and you're helping somebody out, right? One of the folks I worked with, he would have a divorce lawyer that would feed him deals. It's like, hey, this couple really wants to move on. They really don't like each other. If you can buy their house quickly, they'll take a discount just to move on with their lives. So that's what I mean by creative deals. Wholesaling is for somebody who has no money but has time, and they go around neighborhoods and they talk to people, they hand out business cards, whatever it is, and say, if you ever want to sell your house and sell it quickly without subject for financing, for example, subject to financing, then phone me. I've got an investor who has cash. and they will get you out of here in 4 weeks, that kind of thing. So they build up a list of houses. They pitch them to investors. They get them under contract. The wholesaler gets the house under contract, and then the house needs to be priced low enough that the wholesaler gets a commission or some sort of a cut, and the deal still makes sense to the investor. So as a wholesaler, I'm making this up, 3% of the sale price. But even after that, I still need to have an investor who's willing to buy it. So that's wholesaling, is when you supply deals to investors. Flips, I think everybody's familiar with that. You buy something, you put some lipstick on the pig, and in 3 months, you get out of it. So you make one-time money. It's not ongoing, so then you have to find the next one to flip. Buy and hold is sort of the bread and butter. It's really easy to rent out a basement suite. The only thing is, if it's a standalone house and you're not living in it, is make sure there's positive cash flow. What that means is you have money left in your pocket at the end of the year. If you're subsidizing a total stranger to live there, then the rent is too low. If that is market rent and you can't get any higher, then that's not an investment. That's a speculation. You need other people to bid up house prices in the city, in the area, in order for you to make money. And there's lots of people, especially in Vancouver, that are subsidizing the renter, and it's not a problem to kick in a couple of $100 a month if you're working. But the reason you have positive cash flow requirement is that real estate buy and hold is long-term business, and lots of stuff happens over years and years. And if you have a nice black box out of which more money comes out than you're putting in, there's no problem. There's no reason to get rid of it. But if you lose your job, you're going through a divorce or something like that, and something's costing you money, you're gonna throw it overboard. And so they say if it doesn't have positive cash flow, sooner or later you're going to lose it, because something bad will happen, and you're going to say, hey, it appreciated some, fine, let's get rid of it, because on a monthly basis it's costing. So positive cash flow is number one. And so many people violate the rule just because they think real estate is king and it's the only way they're comfortable with making money. You have to get educated and learn about it. And yeah, decide on what you want. Joint ventures, there's so many different ways to do this. A friend of mine basically got 5 people together to get the down payment, and then they bought an investment property and they just wanted to flip it. So the mortgage was in his name, but he only contributed like a fifth of the down payment money, which was 20%. And then they realized in Vancouver they had to hold the house for at least a year. So then they got a renter in. So then he had to deal with the renter. But basically, joint ventures is people contribute something, whether it's a realtor who won't charge a commission, or it's a property manager who won't charge anything in order to keep on top of the house. I was in a joint venture with somebody who would find the house, fix the house, and all I had to do was provide the down payment, the money to fix the house, and the good credit rating to get a mortgage. So, and then we split the proceeds such as they were, 50-50. So joint ventures are great if you find somebody who will contribute, right? Money can always be borrowed. Time, I guess, can always be spent, or depends on, what you want. Buying real estate to live in is not an investment. It's generally a cost. So don't treat it like an investment. Don't say, oh, it's appreciating, that's why I'm buying it. If you want to live in a house with a white picket fence, that's fine. That's your lifestyle, but just be aware that it's not going to necessarily make you money. In fact, it's going to cost you money. Uh, Investment is a totally different animal. So just make sure you differentiate the two and the reasons for buying them. An investment needs to make sense financially. Your primary residence does not, and it's not really expected to. You could argue that you don't have to pay rent somewhere and that it's saving you money that way. I mean, it's a discussion, but generally, you're not expecting much out of your primary residence. By the way, real estate goes up over a 50-year period, goes up the rate of inflation. What's been happening, I guess, for the last dozen years is because of the low interest rates, and it's not really sustainable. And eventually you get sort of a regression to the mean in all cases where, we could have a lot of flat time. Um, just speaking historically, I don't know what life is going to throw at us in Canada, but real estate underperforms stocks. It's more stable, arguably because it's less liquid. It's not like there's the story of, your neighbor every day yells at you over the fence, I'm going to buy your house for 500,000. Oh, today I'm going to buy it for 480,000. Oh no, today's 550,000. Like nobody's doing that. And therefore, and you also cannot press a button and get rid of a house. So that's why it's not as volatile, but it's also not as towards moving as the stock market. Not even close. It's just that people don't like the roller coaster ride of the stock market. So that's why real estate is the way to go. Real estate also allows you to use borrowing in order to multiply your returns. So if you put down 20% and you borrow 80% and you're able to make, so now you have 5-to-1 leverage. So if you let's use real numbers. If you buy a house for 100,000, but you put in 20,000 as a down payment, and then you borrowed the 80,000, and then the house makes 10,000, whether an appreciation or whatever, you made 10,000 off your 20,000, not off of the 100. So you actually made 50%, not 10%, right? That's the 5-to-1. As long as you're able to pay the interest, of course. So, I mean, you can leverage for stocks as well, but stocks are already volatile enough that I generally try to avoid. Well, I told you my theory before. If the stock market drops 20%, then I'll borrow to invest. But that's because I don't have cash lying around, not because I want to use the leverage. Anyways, went off on a tangent there. So another asset type is private equity. This is for sophisticated investors and generally richer people. Some of them actually make sure that you are either an eligible or accredited investor. Those have a different meaning in every province. Google them if you're interested. It means you need to have at least, I'm making this up, have at least $1 million in assets and or have 100,000 in income every year and so on. They want to see something before they'll get you into the private equity. I mean, they don't try too hard, but they want to make sure that you're a sophisticated investor, because private equity is small companies that don't want to go onto the stock exchange to get money. They want to still do projects, and so they go to rich people and they say, okay, I'm buying an apartment building, I'm buying a car wash, I'm buying a self-storage place, whatever it is, and pay me money now, I will fix it up, I will pick out the bad renters, and in 5 years I will sell it for 10% or 10% a year more. And in the meantime, I'm going to be paying you something every quarter, every month, whatever it is. But it has nothing to do with the stock exchange. So there's a lot less information about it. Your only recourse is generally court action. And it's a nice diversification, I guess, from the stock market because it's totally unaffected by wars, for example. Like it's not frequently traded or anything like that. In fact, it's difficult to get out of. But also there's no volatility from the macro events that are happening in our world. So it's an alternative for risk-friendly investors. They'll take you for a nice dinner. There's a presentation to a group. I like going to the dinners because it's if you get the right table, everybody sort of starts talking, and you get some high-powered people sometimes. Startups are something similar. You can be what do they call them? An angel investor. Generally super risky. You have a good chance of not seeing any money at all and losing your investment. Usually anybody who finances startups makes sure that if it does work out, that they make out like a bandit. So private debt, usually online, or you can lend to investors or to real estate people just directly. So that is a thing. And commodities, gold, silver, oil, you can do it, through exchange traded funds. You can get gold coins. I would always prefer paper assets or electronic assets today. I don't want gold coins anywhere. They're costly to store, and there's usually commissions when you take them to the gold trader. They will always rip you off in order to sell them, and they'll take a commission to buy them too usually. And you can also invest in currency, usually for short-term trading, not like you think that in 5 years the US dollar is going to be stronger than Canadian, so you go tomorrow and buy US dollars and sit on them. Currency or forex, foreign exchange, is usually very quick. So that's not my thing at all, actually. Okay, so here's my favorite slide of the whole presentation. So I'm going to compare all the different vehicles, and I gave them a letter grade. So I'm going to go quickly. So downside risk protection. What protection do you have from it going down? Appreciation, what are the chances that it's going to go up in price? Leverage is whether I can borrow in order to invest in this vehicle. Liquidity means, can I get out of it? Not for my original money. Can I get whatever it is worth out today? Can I get that out fairly quickly? Control is, do I have any control at all over this asset? Cash flow, am I getting money appearing in my account? Tax benefits, just like it sounds, is it tax friendly in a non-registered account? Inflation hedge, does it protect me from inflation? So that's what that means. And please, people, chime in. This is all an opinion piece, so I'm happy to have a debate. So stocks, downside risk protection, I'm giving it a B minus. Stocks can definitely go down, or ETFs that contain stocks, or mutual funds that contain stocks. They can definitely go down. I've had one go bankrupt in my 20 years of investing. It does happen. The expression is, the stock market takes the escalator up and the elevator down. So you can definitely have a bad drop if there's a bad quarterly report. Stocks can definitely go down. Bigger stocks are less volatile, both up and down, than small stocks, which we talked about. Appreciation, stocks over the long run, especially small cap stocks, will outperform everything. Leverage, you can get a margin account and borrow. Like right now, I'm leveraging existing stuff I have in order to buy more. That's a little bit risky because if stuff goes down, you might have to sell stuff or transfer in cash, which kind of sucks. The first part, especially, and the second part if you don't have cash. Liquidity, can I get out? Absolutely. Publicly traded stocks, boom, you press a button, and the next day you can have the money in your checking account. Control, not really. I mean, you can attend the annual meeting, and for a small company, locally based, they might listen to you. You can ask questions on phone calls, that kind of stuff, but you can't generally tell the CEO what to do, not as a small investor anyways. Cash flow, yeah, if you get dividend payers, you can definitely get cash from it without selling it. Of course, if you sell it, then you're definitely getting the money. Tax benefit, generally, stocks are really good for a non-registered account. If they go up in value, you get capital gains taxes, meaning it's at half the rate that your wages or your salary or interest would be. And if you get foreign dividends, then they get taxed harshly. If you get Canadian eligible dividends, then they get taxed very little, as we talked about. Inflation hedge, sort of, more in the sense that stocks in the long run will outperform inflation. They don't benefit from inflation so much. Generally, if there's inflation, then interest rate hikes happen. And with the exception of a few financials, uh, most stocks get harmed by higher interest rates because the economy slows down. If they have any debt, then they're paying more interest on that debt. And if it's something that owns real estate, like REITs, real estate investment trusts, which are stocks, they will get beaten up when interest rates go up because all of their debt is now more expensive. Okay, next were bonds. So remember, bonds are loans, whether to government or to companies. So downside risk protection. So bonds lose value when interest rates go up. Otherwise, so that's the number one over here. Otherwise, I would say bonds are fairly safe. If you buy government bonds, then government isn't going to go out of business. If you buy bonds from a company in Venezuela, then all bets are off. But then they're probably paying you quite a bit in interest. Appreciation, not the greatest. Most bonds, like North America based or government, will be 5, 6, 7% kind of thing. The Yeah, so they're the ballast to your portfolio. They're the safety. Leverage, same kind of thing. You can borrow against existing assets in order to buy these. Liquidity, usually you can get out of them pretty well. Control, again, not really. Cash flow, because all bonds pay interest, you can get money coming in, no problem. The interest isn't great, like I said. Couple, like it might be the interest might itself be 4 or 5%, and then maybe you'll get a little bit of appreciation. So that's the total return might be the 6 or 7 that I mentioned. And if it's government, then it's even less. Tax benefits, not great because the interest in a non-registered account gets taxed fully, like as salary or wages. Inflation hedge? No, not really. In fact, bonds will lose value with inflation because interest rates go up. When interest rates go up, existing bonds lose value because new bonds come out and they pay a higher interest rate. So the existing bonds have to be discounted. So you actually get a capital loss on existing bonds when interest rates go up. Bonds did really well for the last decade and a bit, a decade and a half, because actually even longer, because we were in a long lower interest rate cycle stretch. Okay. Real estate. So downside protection, I would argue, is pretty good. I mean, you have exceptions like they had in 2008 in the US, but generally real estate maintains its value, especially at least over a few years. Yeah, you can get, 6 months when you have a downturn in real estate for sure. Appreciation, I would argue, not awesome. Roughly at the rate of inflation again. Remember, and to go off on a tangent a little bit, like people, both especially primary residences, but also investment properties, like there's a mortgage and you don't want to lose the roof over your head and you don't want to lose the property. And if there's a renter, the renter hopefully is at least covering the mortgage. And so you have sort of a forced savings plan that that you're having to keep making these payments, right? And then 20, 30 years later, the property's paid off and it's gone up times five. But so people think, hey, this is awesome, right? For the investment property, the risk is gone, but also so is the leverage. So you're now making 2 or 3% a year rather than 10 or 15. But the risk is gone, the mortgage is paid off, and you think, hey, this is awesome. But during that time, the stock market had done way better. So I'm arguing that appreciation is a C. The leverage, definitely everybody seems to be willing to lend against the property. Uh, I don't know why they think it's safe, especially with interest rates being higher. But anyways, generally real estate is the prototypical and stereotypical thing where you can use leverage, where you can borrow in order to multiply your gains and losses, but with real estate. Cindy says, question. Okay, Cindy, can I finish this because your question is a little bit off the topic, so let me finish this and then we'll answer your question. Okay. Liquidity, I'm giving it a C minus. True, you can get a home equity line of credit against a real estate to get some money out, but you're not actually able to sell the asset, and it's tough to sell. Like it can take months and months, and by the time somebody takes possession, like you could have a half a year go by and you didn't get the price you wanted. Control, yeah, I would argue you have some control over renters. You certainly don't have any control over the city or the neighbors. And if the renter damages your home, I mean, all you can get is the damage deposit, and good luck trying to get anything else out of the renter. So yeah, while like I'm completely unafraid somebody's going to damage my stock. You know what I mean? Cash flow depends on whether the real estate is actually cash flowing, as I had mentioned earlier. But it should have money in your pocket. Otherwise, it's a speculation. It's not an investment. Tax benefit, yes, you do get tax write-offs. Rent, however, is taxed as salary, which kind of sucks. You think it's investment income and it would be taxed a little bit more friendly, but apparently enough people do it that it's being taxed as salary. The appreciation in rental properties once you sell is taxed as capital gain, so that's half. So I would argue there is some tax benefit with real estate. Inflation hedge, yes. Real estate stays with inflation. It goes up together with inflation. Okay, let's pause and read Cindy's question. So question for the end of the presentation. Okay, I'll wait till the end. Okay, cool, thanks. Private equity. So these are the risky small companies that you're giving them money directly. Downside risk protection, not really. Some maybe. I've had one go bad, which went to zero. It went to, I guess, sort of receivership, and the vulture of a company is basically just sucking the last amount of my money out of it, and like my accountant wrote it off a long time ago. Uh, so they can go to zero, and you won't even get any warning, which is the worst part of it. Appreciation, yes. Uh, Generally double digits if everything works out okay. Uh, yeah, if you get the right one, like they say they're targeting 20% a year, that kind of thing. Whatever you get is what you get. Um, it's best effort, and that's why you're supposed to be a sophisticated investor when you're buying it, that you know what you're getting into and you know the risks, and apparently you can analyze their business processes and know whether they're going to make money or not. But yeah, if you get the right one, then it's great. If you get a bad one, I guess like with everything else, it's a disaster. Leverage, no, you can't borrow against them or anything like that. Liquidity, you you're basically stuck. Like the money that you put in, uh, depending on the investment, they have limits each quarter that you can pull out. First come, first served. So they'll say each quarter we'll only give back $50,000, and people start lining up to get their money back out. Whoop, whoop, what's it doing? So some of them basically says, yeah, we're going to charge you penalties after the first 2 years. The first 2 years you can't get any money out at all. So it's usually 3 to 5 years. So no liquidity. Control, not really, not at all, really. You can talk to the managers, but they'll do whatever they want. Your decision is just buy or no buy. And if you don't like what they're reporting to you once you put the money in, it's a shoulder shrug. They're not gonna do anything. Cash flow, if you get the right ones, they will cash flow, and they'll give you money every every month. Like I'm getting $200 from a private equity called Centurion. Every month on the 15th of the month, it's like clockwork. You could set your watch by it, but it's only like 3 or 4% a year, obviously. But every month I get cash flow. Tax benefits, yeah, generally. The stuff I pick, there's no taxes on the cash flow. They're giving you your own money back. And whoop, my screen's doing funny things. I'm curious whether it's going to be on the recording or not. Anyway, they're giving you your own money back, and then at the end, you're going to get capital gains taxed. So it's taxes are not bad. Inflation hedge, yeah, as long as it's appreciating, it's not linked to inflation one way or the other. Okay, startups and businesses, downside risk protection, absolutely none. Sorry, okay, come on. Downside risk protection, none. It can go to zero fairly easily. If you get lucky, then you're gonna do really well. So appreciation, I have it as an A. Leverage, no. You have to supply your own money. Liquidity, generally, they have you as an investor until some critical point. when they go public or whatever it is, and then you'll have your payday. But up until then, generally, you can't get your money out. You might have some control if you have a controlling interest, or if you're sitting on the board or something, you might be able to do something. Cash flow, generally not. Any money the company makes is being pushed back into the business. Tax benefits, yeah, I mean, you'll write off tax losses, right? And inflation hedge, uh, nothing specific to inflation. Like it could outperform it if it does well. Gold, right? It is an investment class. Gold is actually quite volatile, so I'm only giving it a C plus for downside protection. Appreciation, not really. Gold sort of goes up at the rate of inflation as well. There's volatility as people get scared, then gold goes up, and as people become more risk friendly and less scared, then they sell gold and they buy stocks. So yeah, I wouldn't really say it's not safe, and it's also not appreciating a heck of a lot. So I don't do gold. You can't borrow against it, so no leverage. Liquidity, sure, as long as you're not in coins, you can get your money out. You don't have any control. It's a commodity, in fact, so whatever the world price of gold is doing is what you're getting. Cash flow, absolutely not. It doesn't pay dividends. Tax benefits, yeah, I mean, if it appreciates, you get capital gains, so there's that. Inflation hedge, people think it's an inflation hedge. It's actually not. It's more of a fear index. When people get scared, they sell out of stocks and they buy gold and bonds. And then when everything is okay again, they sell gold and they buy stocks. So, yeah. And last but, well, definitely not least is crypto. I'm not a crypto guy at all. So downside risk protection, absolutely none. If if things go well, you can make a mint, but you could also lose your shirt. I don't think you can borrow against it, so leverage, I've got an F. You can certainly get out of it 24/7. You don't even have to wait for any market to be open. You certainly have no control. In fact, if you lose your password, you're kind of screwed. Cash flow, no. There are ETFs in Canada for 3 years, freshly minted in the US, and some of them have an options overlay where you're getting cash flow, but that's from the options, not from crypto itself. Tax benefits, yeah, oops, same kind of capital gains. You have to report them, and the government can find out. Like, I don't know why people thought they didn't have to report stuff. Is it an inflation hedge? It doesn't benefit from inflation. It just acts as a random number generator, and so it's a differentiation from other assets. Okay. So, anyways, I hope I kind of enjoy that comparison. I think it sort of summarizes everything. So have a little bit of everything for diversification. Have art if it gives you pleasure, but also you could sell it if you can find the right buyer. Um, yeah, decide on what you like and what you're comfortable with. And everything has pros and cons. Everybody will develop a favorite or already has a favorite. So seminar 12 is the last one. I'll go through it really quickly, then we can get to Cindy's question and any other questions at the end. So financial advisors and other information. So financial advisors still are working with a lot of people. So I wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about robo-advisors and other info and give you a reading list. So financial advisors. You can have bank financial advisors and independent ones. They are paid by commissions from the sale of the mutual fund, and they also get anywhere between 0.25% to 1% trailing fees per year. That is all one way or another coming from your pocket. If they tell you that you're not paying them, that is very disingenuous. They're very much wrong. I would say they're very close to lying to you outright, because the commissions that the mutual fund company charges you are coming out of your proceeds, so out of your pocket ultimately, and they are being given to the financial advisor's bank. And I've had a financial advisor tell me, "You're not paying me," and I'm just like, "Hey, you're working for free." Many years later. So some get paid by the transaction, which leads to churning where they do transactions. My retiring mother sold, her financial advisor sold one bank and bought another bank and said this one's going to be better. And I looked at them and I'm like, really? Okay. And he just charged 700 for the sale and 800 for the buy. So that doesn't really happen all that much anymore, but you should definitely know how your financial advisor gets paid. When I first started investing, I thought, oh, it's like asking for their salary, like, oh, that's a faux pas. And it's like, no, it's coming out of my pocket. I really need to know. Um, there's also fee only, which is percentage of assets. So it's very similar to the MER on the mutual fund, except it's as a percentage of assets, and then they'll get you into investments that have lower MERs, but you'll pay them probably 1%, and then you'll still pay the MER on the mutual fund. Or if they get you into ETFs, then you'll pay the MER on the ETF. And then probably the only one that you can really trust is the one that you pay by the hour. I would argue those are the only ones that are going to tell you the truth. Fee only, when your assets appreciate, they will benefit from it. So they'll generally get you into good stuff. The transaction ones are terrible, and the commission ones, they can be good if you get the right financial advisor, but they will they have a conflict of interest. They really do. So they'll give you a KYC, know your client, they'll just give you a preset portfolio depending on how they're getting paid. So they don't do anything magical. They have a pre-researched 10 to 15 portfolios, and depending on how you score on the 20 questions, they'll give you a different portfolio if you're risk friendly, and if you don't need the money anytime soon, then you're in an aggressive portfolio. If you need the money back in 6 months, then you're going to be in a super conservative portfolio. Fiduciary versus suitability, that's more of a US thing, but fiduciary means that the financial advisor has to do what is in your best interest. While suitability just means that it is an investment that is okay for you according to your risk profile, it's suitable for you, but it could be a crappy mutual fund that they get a high commission from, but it is still suitable for you because it is, I'm making this up, it is 60-40 stocks and bonds, but it could have really poor performance. While fiduciary, those will generally be the fee only financial advisors, the two bottom ones here, that do fiduciary, because then they will do what is in your best interest. So they will put you into the low fee, either well-performing mutual funds or low fee ETFs, because their compensation is aligned with you doing well. So generally, to me, a financial advisor needs to add value by doing and updating your financial plans. Never have I ever had a financial advisor who updated my financial plan. They always do it the first time you meet them, and then nothing. then because it's extra work for them. They should be rebalancing. Never has anyone done that for me either when I had financial advisors. And they should be updating your portfolio. They should be teaching. They should be checking on things like insurance for you. Not selling it to you. Do you need life insurance? Do you have financial dependence? They should ask you about having a will and power of attorney. Maybe they'll get a kickback from the lawyer if they send you to them, whatever. They should check in on your mortgage. That generally doesn't happen. The highest value add from a financial advisor, which if you don't have one, you need to do yourself, is talk you out of selling when the market is down and preventing emotional decisions. They should be teaching you and they should be recommending investments. But today you can Google and you can find good investments yourself. If that's the only thing a financial advisor is doing, that's not good enough for how much you're paying them. And if they're putting you into crappy investments, that is terrible. So you should always compare investment performance to its benchmark, not just whether it made money or lost money. Like, don't look at investments just in the absolute terms. Like if you walk into your financial advisor's office and they say, hey, congratulations, you're up 10% this year. And you say, how much did the appropriate benchmark do? And if they say 15%, then it's like, okay, we have a problem if you underperformed the benchmark. On the flip side, if you walk in and they say, hey, it's been a bad year, you're down 5%, and I say, how much is the market down? And they say 10%, then I'm like, you're doing your job. I'm down, but less than the market. So don't just look at it in absolute value. Same for your own portfolio. If you're trading stocks and you're not beating the index, you're spending a whole bunch of effort and not getting ahead. I would highly suggest having only one financial advisor that you trust, because then they have a complete view of your assets. My mother, again, in her infinite wisdom, decided to have multiple advisors for diversification, I guess, or to keep them honest or something. I don't know, but it was they don't have a complete view, and they could really get you into inappropriate investments because they don't know where the rest of your portfolio is. So great financial advisors don't just pick mutual funds. I can do that myself. Get all of my life together and show me blind spots and problems. They they know my life, and they point to what is important to me out of the huge amount of web info. They're your sober second thought. They talk me off the ledge when the market is going down, or they tell me you should be buying more. They make me stick to a plan, reminding me why it's important and what the plan is. They do risk management. They check to make sure that I'm not gonna lose more than I'm willing to lose. They help me with a budget, so I have money to invest. Nowhere ever has any financial advisor that I've ever been exposed to helped you with budgeting. They will just sort of sell you stuff, which I think is terrible. They should be aware, they're not an accountant, but they should be aware of your taxes and know how their investments work within taxes. So you may wish to get them in touch with your accountant. You're supposed to have a team, and without you being the go-between, they should talk to each other. Again, never has that happened, at least to my knowledge. They should know how I'm going to take the money out later. So as I'm divesting, generally the tax preferred and tax deferred stuff stays invested longer. So generally you're pulling money out of the non-registered earlier. and then the RRSP, or when you have to pull the RRSP, and the TFSA is sort of in to fill in any gaps, or it's pulled out last. So they should have some knowledge of this rather than just not not having any idea. And for example, not to overload your RRSP. Like anybody who has, as I said previously, if anybody has $1 million in their RRSP at retirement time, good for them, but they also have a bit of a tax problem. So something to be aware of. They should know the tax laws. Again, not an accountant, but as far as it comes to investing, they should have some knowledge. They should point out opportunities, point out weaknesses. So this is sort of somebody looking in from the outside. If you don't have a financial advisor, you should be covering this somehow, whether yourself, which obviously the way your portfolio is right now is the best it is because you picked it, so you should think that it's the best. Get a sober second thought, right? I use inconspicuously, I use the guys in the investing club. We don't like look at each other's portfolios, but we talk about it enough, and so they're sort of my unofficial financial advisors. They should look at the financial advisor should look at the big picture for you. Rebalancing of the portfolio, absolutely. Again, without you asking about it, they generally won't do it because it requires filling out forms and it's extra work for them. And definitely prevent emotional investing decisions. When the market is crashing, you should be buying. That's the bottom line. When the market is high, I know everybody feels real comfortable, but that's when there's the greatest risk. All right, Chris, have a good evening. I will be posting this probably over the weekend. And the previous ones are also on the YouTube channel. So I would argue be willing to pay for great advice. You get what you pay for. If you just get a salesman, they're not going to be all that helpful, and you're still paying for them, which really sucks. Robo advisors, so they've been around in the last decade, give or take. Everything's done online. You get the same 10 to 15 predetermined portfolios. You're not getting anything different that you would be at the bank, except everything is low cost. You do still have access to a financial advisor. I actually, because I have over $500,000 with Wealthsimple, they gave me all sorts of stuff, access to airport lounges, which was cool when I was traveling. But more importantly, it was a financial advisor from Wealthsimple that I ended up chatting with, and we have a follow-up appointment. And that's all free. It's just because I have a certain amount of money with Wealthsimple. So robo advisors are good if you're starting out. As your portfolio grows, you may wish to take it over yourself. And then when your portfolio is really high, try to get the financial advisor once every couple of years to look at your portfolio. Don't pay him a percentage. Do the one that you pay by the hour, and it'll cost you 5,000. But if you're in the millions, you don't want to be paying a percentage. You want to be paying the 5,000. So I would sort of suggest to grow that way, perhaps. If you want to do it directly from the beginning and do ETFs, absolutely, more power to you. Robo advisors are fine, and I guess they will talk with you in person or like over the phone. So yeah, when you fill out the 20 questions, that determines the portfolio for you. The advisor, or actually the website, will keep the portfolio for you, rebalance it automatically. You don't have to do anything, which is nice. Portfolios are usually low-fee ETFs and index funds, similar to couch potato portfolios, which we saw earlier. You can easily do it yourself, easily. They will generally charge a percentage of assets. Maybe they're the ones that if you have under $20,000, they won't charge you anything. And then once your portfolio grows, then they'll start charging you. So, you know, you have to choose what is best for you. Uh, I I should say, even if you have a financial advisor, no one will take as good a care of your money as you. Absolutely not. Doesn't matter how much you're paying somebody. It's a job to them. It's not their livelihood. So okay, information, Morningstar, I talked about. For individual stocks and ETF research, I use stockchase.com. It's kind of cool. I input my portfolio in there, and what they do is they listen to the Canadian Business News Network and the US, the CNBC, what Kramer yells at the screen, and they transcribe it, they link it to a stock, and they make it available. So if I'm buying a new stock, I will research it there and I'll see what the advisors and experts, quote unquote, have been saying. So that's a good resource. They want you to pay for stuff, but I seem to have gotten away without paying for anything. So it's a good resource, and because I input my portfolio, if they said something about one of my stocks, then I get an email about it every day. Money Sense, I also mentioned personal finance investing. It's Canadian. So I think Stockchase started out as Canadian, and then they expanded to US CNBC as well. But generally, they just looked at BNN, which is Canadian. Canadian Couch Potato, low cost portfolios, good reading, articles again. And BNN Bloomberg, so that's the Canadian Business News, videos, 5 to 7 minutes, manageable amounts. So I kind of scroll through there, and if it's stuff that I'm interested in, whether it's general or if it's about a stock that I own, then I will listen to them. Reading list, Automatic Millionaire by David Bach is a good one. He's done a whole series. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't like Robert Kiyosaki. Now he's all about crypto. Before he was all about real estate. He didn't seem to like stocks at the beginning, then he did. Anyways, he basically says to invest and let your money grow. So it's a classic. It's a good read. I listen to it, I think. Wealthy Barber Returns, good stuff, very readable. So it sort of tells it in a palatable story rather than, cold hard facts, which I guess are boring. Millionaire Next Door isn't a bad one. You could really condense it and basically say it's about personal finance. The rich people don't look rich is the bottom line. Anybody who looks rich is probably up to their eyeballs in debt, is basically what they're saying. And that's it. Make sure your financial advisor provides value, otherwise they're not helping you. And that's it. Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing. And so Cindy says, question for the end of your presentation. We have arrived. I was looking at digrin.com to see a list of Canadian dividend aristocrats. It lists the stocks, the dividend yield, and the PE ratio. Should I choose the high dividend payers with a lower PE ratio? Is it true you should look for a PE ratio under 25? So this is a little bit maybe beyond the basics, because PE ratios is for individual stock analysis. So dividend aristocrats, I think in one of the earlier sessions, I had a question about that. So the US has a different definition for it than we do. For us, it means stocks that have raised their dividends every year of the last 5 years. I think that's it, just 5 years. The dividend yield, to answer your question, so if their share price is $1 and they're paying out 40 cents per share in dividends, then that means their dividend yield is 40%. Okay, so that sounds awesome. That means you invest $1 and every year you're going to get 40 cents. So this is an extreme that doesn't happen. Even if it's in double digits, even if they're paying out 10, 11%, generally that's thought to be unsustainable. So the reason it could have happened, remember, it's a ratio. Dividends paid out per share divided by the share price or price per share. So if the share price dropped, then this fraction goes up in value. So if you see a really high dividend yield, then that means generally that there's something wrong with the company because their share price went down and it's not sustainable. Okay. They don't want to cut their dividend because that makes the share price go down some more usually. But they will probably have to eventually. So there's a whole bunch of other things to look at, such as the payout ratio, which is the dividend per share divided by the profit per share. So if that is sort of 40 to 60%, then that means that they're paying 40 to 60% of their dividend, sorry, of their profits in dividends. That feels sustainable. So that would be a much better thing to look at than just the yield, because they could cut the dividend tomorrow and then the yield is going to drop, and so will the share price, and you're not going to get either price appreciation nor cash flow. The PE ratio is basically how much are you paying for a dollar of earnings, of profits. I do look for stuff that's low PE, but too low, it might be something called a value trap, that it's cheap but for a reason. So just looking at those two, or just looking at ratios, like that's just the beginning of your analysis. Okay. There's also companies that pay a very nice yield, but they pay more than their profits. And utilities, for example, they pay more than their profits in dividends, and that is because you should be looking at their cash flow, because in order for them to pay less taxes, they have taken for accounting purposes, they have taken a lot of expenses that are non-cash. Depreciation, for example, like that does not prevent them from paying dividends. So for utility companies, you would actually look at the coverage of the cash flow to the dividend. So it is a little bit trickier. If you're interested, I recorded a course about stock analysis. It is on my website, where it would talk about stuff like that. But to answer the question, no, I wouldn't do that. I would pick good companies that pay a dividend yield in 5, maybe 6% range, that feel sustainable, and that's what I invest in. not in stuff that pays a 20% dividend yield and is a dumpster fire of a company.